talk about chatbots. My name is, oh, you're here already. My name is Loic Le Meur, and I started a company called Leade.rs, and we are helping put together this session with Kunze from Pandorabots, okay, and Phil Libin, who is a partner at General Catalyst. You guys want to sit? Maybe that's going to be more convenient. So, who knows about chatbots here in the room? Very good. Who believes it's going to be all hype? Very few people. Very good. So, how about so we're here to discuss about chatbots, and Lauren, I will let you introduce yourself in more details, but you are one of the very, very early actors on this space. You were designing chatbots, you were 15, right?
Yes, we were too early, some would say. But now the timing is right. So I work at Pandorabots. It's the world's largest and oldest platform for building and hosting chatbots. We've had about 235,000 developers on the platform since we got started in 2002 when I was 15. And they've built about 300,000 chatbots, which have chatted with end users over 3 billion times. So,
congratulations.
A lot of data.
And Phil, I think you're the most active investor in the space.
I think so, yeah. I've made 5 investments in bots in the past year. I've been an investor for about a year. And I think it's an area that's going to pretty profoundly change the world over the next few years.
So can you both tell me what is a chatbot? Because there are you could argue that they always existed somehow, one form or another. So what could you define what it is, both of you? Lauren?
Sure. A chatbot is a software robot that can hold a conversation in natural language. But the definition is definitely morphing. Some people say bot, and they mean that as an extension or added functionality or app within a messaging platform that doesn't necessarily need to have a conversation. It might obey a command and take an action on your behalf. But fundamentally, natural language processing is sort of the key technology hurdle that's left to overcome for conversational software.
Yeah, I really use it as a shorthand for conversational UX. Conversational user experience, by which I just mean different from static user experience, which is what an app has. So if you use an app, some designer has arbitrarily decided where things go, and so somebody's decided, well, if you want to do this, you have to push on this tab and then swipe left and then hit the little hamburger button and then push button A. And so static UIs are collections of these kinds of decisions, and some of them are really good, and they're made well, and they start to feel kind of natural, but really they're all different in every app, and they're pretty arbitrary. And a bot is a conversational UX, which means that rather than some designer deciding what every action is, it adapts as you talk to it. So instead of knowing that you have to push this button and this button and this button, you just say what you want. You have a conversation, and the user experience adapts to your conversation. And I think that's a really massive difference, and it's the next stage of how we're going to live with technology.
Right, that's the key to the fundamental shift in computing, is that computers will now understand our language and will be able to interact with them naturally.
Yeah, and this is, I think every major leap forward in technology has come when some things have changed to remove friction, to make it easier to deal with tech. So the last big revolution was probably 2007, 2008 around mobile, around smartphones, and that was all about making it easier, reducing the friction to use technology, because now you had the phone on you all the time. It was a lot easier to do this than to install complicated programs. Bots are the next evolution of making it even easier and even less friction. And I think they're actually going to have a bigger impact on the world than even phones did.
So tell me, what are the most popular bots right now? The one I'm thinking about is the one I use, so Amazon Echo in my home. I talk to it. It doesn't understand anything because of my French accent. Very, very, literally even saying Alexa is a challenge. I have to say it 3 or 4 times before Alexa actually understands me, but that's my fault. So is that the most popular? What's the most popular bot?
No, that's the software's fault. That's not your fault. I think that was actually one of the historically big barriers to entry for bots and voice interfaces, is that speech recognition is a difficult problem that's not completely solved, as you're experiencing, and speech synthesis is not completely solved either. Bots are really exploding today and more accessible to today's developer because of the rise in popularity of text messaging and messaging platforms. So I think Alexa has been hugely popular, and voice is the future. On our platform, we see entertainment-focused bots more popular in terms of end-user engagement, but there are different metrics being defined right now to determine what makes a bot popular and what doesn't, because some bots you might only talk to once a day to check the weather, but you might use it every day, which is different than a bot that you're talking to that might be a non-player character in a game and you're having a long dialogue with.
But like all the major players are either in the space or coming into the space. So we talked about Amazon with Echo and Alexa. I like to call her Alexa. And then, so can you comment on this? Google is also coming up with one, not yet. Then Apple is going to open iMessage. You were just telling me backstage.
Yeah, every major GAFAM company is making a bet on the space, or not a bet, just really actually committing to investing in the space long term. Microsoft has a bot framework and developer platform, and they've opened up Skype. Facebook is allowing bots, Kik, Slack, Telegram. Apple is opening iMessage. Google will have Allo. All of these businesses have said we are going to allow businesses and bots to communicate with users on our messaging platforms.
But that's right. I think these are platforms, so they're not bots themselves.
That's where the bots live.
Well, Apple has Siri, and then Google has Google Now, which is becoming Google Assistant, which will power Allo and Google Home, like Alexa. Amazon has Alexa. So a lot of them do. Microsoft has Cortana. So a lot of them do have that general purpose personal assistant.
So you need a place for your bot to live.
Yes.
Because if you put it only on your website, your corporate website, you will have little traffic. So you want it to be on Messenger or Slack or like places where there is traffic already. Is that right?
I think there's a few different questions here. The platforms are being developed by basically all the big companies. But just like it happened in 2007, 2008 around phones, you had every major company at the time was rushing to get it to make a platform for apps. And so you had, Microsoft and Google, but also BlackBerry and Nokia and Palm and lots of companies that we don't really know about anymore. Same thing's happening now. In fact, the platform wars are sort of like the second chance. So big companies that weren't successful in becoming meaningful platforms for apps, they've got a second chance. So like Microsoft didn't actually become a meaningful platform for mobile apps, but now they've got a chance of becoming a meaningful platform for bots. And there's been lots of new entrants, like Slack, which wasn't even around, is now a pretty credible platform. Amazon tried to become a meaningful platform for mobile apps, didn't really work out. They had their Kindle phone and all that stuff, but now they're trying again with bots. So the platform wars are going to be pretty fierce, but that's, I think, separate from the actual end user functionality, the equivalent of the apps, which will be made mostly by third-party companies, just like apps were. And I think we'll see several, multi-billion-dollar bot companies started, right about now, that a few years from now will be the breakout bots, just like, Evernote and Dropbox and Uber and Airbnb were kind of the breakout app companies from that generation.
So you're predicting billion-dollar companies doing just a bot or using just a bot, and new ones, new players.
Yeah, but that's like saying that would be like saying in 2008, like you're predicting billion-dollar companies using just an app. Like, but is Airbnb just an app? I mean, it's an app, but there's a lot more there. I mean, Uber is just an app.
Instagram
it's a conduit to the service.
Yeah, so the next generation of those, a lot of them will be conversational. So so in that sense, there will be companies that are being started now that are just bots, but will actually be world-changing, multi-billion-dollar companies.
Any questions so far in the room? Yes, right there. Thank you. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Andrew. I'm an audiologist. I work with hearing aids, hearing problems, and so on. I'm just curious as to whether much is being done in you talked about, I guess, the software space and what these bots will be able to do. How about the hardware space? Do you see these as being worn at the ear level, that kind of thing?
Yes, we see a lot of people developing for the hardware space. So despite what you said, developing for websites is still very popular because the web is neutral and so is SMS, rather than developing for a third-party platform. But we see a lot of IoT deployments and bots on connected devices as the interface. And that's actually where a bot is the only sensible interface if you don't have a keyboard or a screen. So connected home hubs, but also hardware robots. Basically, once you get a bot running on a chip, you can embed it in any device. So I definitely expect to see way more devices and that use case to be more powerful and obvious than texting.
Can you give a few concrete examples of a bot in a device? That's a great question that, well, like Echo is in a device. And you put it on the table, you switch it on, it works. That you think will come, or that we will use. I'm just trying to, because honestly, between the hype and the reality, there is no like mainstream bot yet. Is there? Something that millions of people use daily?
So almost everything
Siri.
that's live right
Siri.
But that was forced on people as
Wait,
part of the
who
operating
uses
system.
Siri daily? 1, 2. So that's hype. Sorry. Siri is, I mean,
There might be a few more outside of this room.
Sure, but my experience with Siri is everybody's kind of struggling with it. It's not super helpful.
I think it's
Right.
important to like not talk about Siri as a bot. Like it really isn't. Like it has some, like it could be a platform for bots. Now that it's opening up a little bit, you can maybe build things on top of it. But these are like Alexi, Siri, Cortana. These have some generalized assistant features in them, but they're really just like part of the platform. Like they're no more a bot than like the built-in Apple calculator was an app. Like it's just something that like comes with the devices that you get, and it's really going to be mostly up to third parties to build like what is the real functionality on top of these things. So like yeah, I mean Lauren's right. Siri comes with the devices, so it doesn't really make sense to ask who uses it and who doesn't. Everyone's kind of tried it. Some people use it a lot, some people don't, but it isn't a product. What we are going to see over the next few months is the emergence of the first real third-party products that are used here. And to your question, like, is there any that are used by are there any third-party bots that are used by millions of people right now? Not seriously. Like nothing that has a lot of engagement. There's some like celebrity bots that come along that get popular for a few weeks.
So that's a personal bot.
Yeah.
That would be the Phil Libin bot.
But there's not a lot, like there's almost nothing right now that's quality. The vast majority of bots that exist today that you can go and download and use are bad. Because it hasn't been that long, and most of the first version, they're just kind of trivial. They're not really meant to be serious. There's a couple of really good ones. We have a couple of really good investments in
So invest in
ones.
5?
We've invested in
All
5.
right, give us some previews of things which have not been launched yet, and like tell me the one you're the most excited about.
Well, I'm not going to give any previews of things that haven't been launched yet. But of the ones that are live, probably our most popular one is a company called Digit, which is well available. It's got hundreds of thousands of users. You can go and download it now on multiple platforms. And it's basically, it's a bot that lives in your savings account, and it basically saves money for you. So it automatically watches your transactions, and it transfers money from one account to the other just to make sure that you're always paying your bills on time, you always have enough cash in the right account. It prevents you
So
from...
that's a bot that watches me and says, you have not paid your electricity bill.
It's kind of like, just think of it as like a wingman that's on your side, making sure that the bank is not screwing you. Because like the bank is always trying to screw you. Like that's why they have checking accounts and savings accounts. Like the only reason
bank in the room?
the only reason that banks still have checking accounts and savings accounts is so they can screw you. Because obviously they can transfer that money themselves. They just choose not to because they know that most people will make poor decisions, take advantage of asymmetry of information. And so Digit is a bot that levels that playing field, makes sure that you're not getting screwed in that way.
I hope that bot doesn't have too many APIs, because if it gets hacked and starts moving money around to wrong places, it's a little scary.
Well, I think...
How do you solve the trust issue there of a bot that moves your money around?
The same way that you do it for any financial app, the same way that you do it for your credit card or your online banking or anything. There's nothing special about the bot in doing that. But that's a good example of a mainstream, consumer-focused bot that does something useful. And there's a few others, but there's very few. But 12 months from now, there's going to be many. Like right now, right now it feels like the hype is not justified because bots got hyped so much and there's just not a lot of results. And like that's literally only true for the next few months. I think like this time next year, there's going to be probably a dozen that are actually like very well known and mainstream.
Give me another example of one you're excited about.
So another bot that I just invested in recently is called Growbot. It's a business, it's an enterprise bot. There's lots more good ideas on the enterprise side than on the consumer side. It's actually pretty easy to see enterprise use cases. So Growbot is super simple. It's in use by, I think, more than 5,000 companies right now. So you can go and check it out. It's a Slack bot. Basically sits in your Slack channel and looks for praise. So whenever you give a coworker compliments, whenever you say like, hey, grats to Loic on getting that contract, or good job, Lauren, on fixing this bug, it looks for positive feedback, and then whenever it sees it, it wakes up and it records it, and it sort of visibly says like, oh, I'm recording this feedback, and it lets people like give it thumbs up, and it keeps track on who's praising whom about what. So it's basically an automated way to do employee feedback, right in line with your communications, not in a separate app, and it's like super simple but pretty profound. And a lot of the companies that use it, like when I was doing my due diligence on it, I talked to a bunch of their customers, and there's people who just say that it literally changes the feeling of the culture in the company. Because you talk the same way you've always talked on Slack, except now like it counts. So people are more likely to actually give positive and constructive feedback and have it mean something. And that couldn't have been done with an app, right? Because like if I had to have a separate app where like if I wanted to praise you for something, I'd have to like go to a different app and praise you in the app. No one would ever do that. But the fact that I can make this work inside of my existing communication channel and add functionality to it, like that's what makes it amazing. Mm-hmm. And there's everything that I've invested in has that characteristic. So everything that I'm looking at, that I'm either hatching or investing in, it's not a separate bot that like a person interacts with just the bot. It's a bot that sits inside of an existing communication between multiple people and adds functionality to that communication. It's like the future of us talking is we're talking and there's technology around us that's actually taking action based on what we talk about. And that's never been done before in the history of technology, and I think that's the new area that we're getting into.
So those bots will just be listening basically and start acting when they can add value. That's a little scary.
I think, well...
Like people say Alexa is listening to everything you're doing.
So first of all, like the scary stuff is like, it's not interesting, right? Because like, and you can always, it's always easy to pick like the scariest thing about anything. You can always be like,
they will take all the jobs.
Look, 100,000 years ago, someone was sitting on stage, at a big cave and saying like, no, it's like this fire, and you rub these sticks together and you get fire. And someone is like, fire, bad.
What if we burn everything down?
Yeah, like obviously any technology, like the easy thing to do is to say how it's going to burn everything down. And, that all exists in bots. And honestly, like, it doesn't matter. Like, we need to take that stuff seriously, but it's the good stuff it allows that's much more interesting.
Yeah, the convenience is really powerful. Like, for us, in terms of what's exciting, we're working with companies that, I walked into a client's office last week and visited them. They have 40 engineers in the office, and some of them are on the website, but most of them are on the app team. There's the Android engineers and the iOS engineers and the people who make the app work between Android and iOS. And they are looking at the traffic numbers that we're projecting on a bot we're releasing next month, and they say, wow, if we get this traffic in a month, this kind of user engagement on the platforms where people already are, that will be more people than downloaded our app in a year. Not even just downloaded it. So that's really exciting from the business and customer perspective. In terms of engagement, I agree with Phil, there's going to be a lot higher. Like, on our platform, the most popular bot is doing up to 1 million interactions a day.
What? 1 million interactions a day?
And it's an entertainment-based bot, so it's not doing anything useful. But I think that...
So tell me what it does.
It just has a natural language conversation with you. It tells jokes. It can tell you your horoscope.
1 million interactions is how many people? Like 100,000 people interact 10 times a day?
Usually 250,000 people.
So it's like an Alexa, it's kind of the same idea?
Yeah, but it's just for entertainment. So it's not actually helping you buy things yet.
Sure.
Yeah, you really should move away from talking about Alexa as a bot. Like,
sorry, she knows a bot, not a bot. I will not anymore. Thank you, Phil. Let's take this question over there.
Hi there, Michael McHarg with the Global Humanitarian Group, Mercy Corps. I lead the ventures team. big believer that probably the last 3, 4, 5 billion people that come onto the internet, voice will be the way people interact. It's the most natural form of interaction with the internet, or will be. Do you see, big issue that we face is education skilling going toward jobs. Do you see a convergence of, say, bots, voice interaction, and education and skilling coming together?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know that, I don't want to overstate voice. I do think that voice interaction with technology is going to get bigger than it is right now, because it's still pretty rare right now, but I don't know that it's ever going to be like the most common way that we interact. I think the most natural way for us to interact is with communication, but doesn't necessarily mean voice. You know, there's a lot more texting than voice calls, and it's not, you know, everyone who texts like can also just use that phone to call, but they choose to text. So there's many circumstances where it's actually more convenient to interact with technology silently, or even with another person through written communication or some form of, you know, text and pictures and drawing. But voice will definitely play a part of it. I don't think it's going to be like everything, but it'll be in the mix, and technology should support everything. But in terms of like making all of this conversational technology ought to make things much more accessible to everyone. And so it should play a very big role in education. It should play a very big role in basically getting the rest of the world online. And I am interested in that space. And in fact, I've just made an investment in a company that's using conversational UI, conversational UX and bots for education, for languages in general, that I think is super exciting. Like, it has very big potential.
There are many questions. Great. Right. It's okay. I can speak while you don't have to run so fast. Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sandra?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sandra. I work for SAP University Alliances. So I work very closely with academia and building bridge from industry to academia. And what I've seen recently is in Japan, they've built these amazing bots teaching Japanese children how to speak English and how to communicate. And I see that as a big disruptor of education and like the need for English-speaking faculty in Japan, really, right? Yeah. How do you see this? I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Lauren, you want to comment?
Yeah, so we actually have a team in Japan, and they're definitely early adopters of bots in general, so we've done a lot of cool things in Japan. E-learning is huge. One of our other historically most popular apps was actually aimed at a Chinese audience, but was learning language. And that's fairly easy to practice with a bot, just practicing conversational skills, right? The bot doesn't need a lot of extra intelligence to practice scripted conversations with you. So that's sort of the low-hanging fruit use case, and I think obviously automating a lot more learning is possible, and we'll start to see.
I think if we pop one level up from that, to kind of tie the last two questions together, I think previously, if you're trying to use computers or technology for education, there was always this extra level put in. There's like you know, me, and then the subject I want to learn. But if I'm using technology for it, then like there's technology in the middle. And first I have to learn how to use this technology before I can use the technology to learn to use whatever I'm actually using. And that's actually a very big step. Like, very often, especially for people who just haven't grown up with the technology, like learning to use the technology is potentially a bigger obstacle than actually learning what they're trying to learn. It's an unnecessary point of friction. The whole point with conversational UX bots is that should just go away, where there shouldn't be well, first let me explain to you how this program works, and you have to like learn how to use it. You just start talking. Just like you don't really have to learn how to use a teacher, because an actual human instructor will be conversational to respond, you shouldn't have to learn how to use a bot, which means that you can get directly to learning what you need to learn without this middle friction point, which I think is a really huge deal for education.
Other questions?
My name is Cyril Glockner. I work for Verizon. Do you see bots kind of using current business models and revenue models, and they're sort of an extension to that, what is already existing, or do you see like new business models and revenue models coming along?
Very good question. Where's the money? And what form does it take? Lauren?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in our experience, it's not realistic to pass that cost on to consumers. I don't think consumers will ever pay to talk to a bot, but I could be wrong. It depends. But we haven't seen it yet. For us, like we're more on the enterprise side in terms of who we work with, so we see a lot of interest in customer care because of the cost savings. So that's one model. And then on the other side, we work with a lot of advertising and marketing firms, and it's on the engagement level. So those are the two big returns on investment from the enterprise perspective that we're seeing today in terms of model. Or were you asking more about the bot, because we're a platform, so our model is subscription-based.
Well, so you make money. You're the first one to make money, like in the old 96 building website days. You're building the bot, so you make money for sure. There is money there, that's for sure.
Yes.
You chose the easiest one. Phil, where do you see the revenue?
Yeah, I think the revenue will be pretty traditional with bots. I think people will pay to use bots when the right ones come along. But
Right.
You're right.
Not yet.
We haven't seen it yet. But most bots right now are, fart bots and things like that. So you wouldn't pay for that. Just like apps were, right? Like first generation of apps were all, they're all toys. They're all trivial, and very few people paid for them. And then you were to build good businesses on top of it. I do think that advertising, I hope, is going to be much, much harder on bots. And I think it will be. I think that the way that you interact with a bot will be somewhere in between how you interact with a friend and technology. Mm-hmm. And so if you knew a person, if you had a friend who was always telling you how great these particular golf balls were and how you really should use these golf balls, and you knew that he was getting paid by the golf ball company to tell you, that would be very annoying. You wouldn't talk with this person a lot. And yet we kind of accept exactly that behavior from most technology that we interact with, but I don't think we'll accept it from bots. So I think the indirect revenue, the advertising model, hopefully bots will expedite the demise of this, which I think will be a good thing for the world. But other than that, I think any kind of direct, honest revenue, I think will be pretty open for bots.
Yeah.
You have bots at Verizon already? No? I bet they're coming. Any other question? No? Well, if you have just wave at me if you have one. I have one. We have not talked about AI. We should, I guess, at one point. So what's the state of how dumb are the bots? They're pretty dumb right now, I think, right? So the experience is pretty low. So what's the state of the AI with bots? Is it just not going to happen for 10 years? Is it still if you talk about, I'll take another example, Phil, M, which you find on on Facebook Messenger, you have M, which you can ask anything to, and they are rolling it out slowly. I don't know if any one of you has it. I have it. You're basically supposed to be able to ask absolutely anything to M, like a concierge, and I use it very successfully to book restaurants, book hotels. It works very well. Each time you go out of it, they have a human basically helping. So it's pretty interesting, but I wouldn't call it an AI.
Right, it's a mechanical Turk.
Exactly.
Well, I think Facebook is in a different position than companies like Google in that they don't have a lot of data. So in order for AI to be effective in terms of stronging AI, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, you need a lot of data. So they are putting this thing out there in order to get data, and once they have a ton of data, a ton of requests, that can be increasingly automated. But the model that you're referring to is actually how most companies who are focusing on building bots that leverage AI in a vertical are working today, because you can't use AI, which in some ways is a marketing term, but you need a lot of data, and you need humans to be training the bot, and you need real people to be interacting with it in order to use AI. So a lot of the bots that you see out there today are pre-scripted, which means someone anticipated the responses and wrote a bot and put it out there, and then they increasingly get better over time as you get more data. But that's pretty much state of the art, and until natural language processing is solved as an AI problem, and we're better able to sort of automate that process from taking a corpus and botifying it, those are big hurdles. Those are the big AI hurdles.
I think people are kind of thinking about this incorrectly. Because I think Hollywood and just sort of marketing in general has led people think that AI is something that is supposed to feel like a human, where the goal of these bots is to make something that's kind of human-like. This, starting all the way back with the Turing test, the idea that somehow the highest thing you can achieve is to make a computer that seems human, and that's just it's just a bad idea. It's very hard to do, but it's also like not a good experience. There is no reason why you should have your technology feel like a human, even if you could accomplish it, which you'll be able to at some point. Right now, it's very hard. But the problem is like talking to a human is a shitty experience. Like I talk to humans all the time. I don't want to talk to more humans.
Give me an example.
Well, that might be in like an.
Give me an example, Phil.
Well, but specifically, like the concept of what we're going for is like the way we measure smart is how human is it is a really narrow idea. I prefer a very different model for this, which is if you have to give a bot a personality, which I think you should. I think things with personality do much better. Yeah. I like to think of the ones that I'm working on not as humans, but as almost like service animals. Like think of a bot as a really smart like service dog. It's like a seeing eye dog or like a sheepdog or something. And if you see like a really good sheepdog like performing at like competitions, they're amazingly smart, right? Like that dog has like superhuman powers at herding sheep. It like knows exactly what sheep want, and it can run around, and it can like it's got ESP. It knows what they're going to think about. Like the dog can do its job at a superhuman level, much better than any person can. And and it has a personality, and you can relate to it, and it's kind of cuddly, and you can even have an emotional bond. But at the end of the day, like, it's both brilliant, but it's not actually smart. Like, it's a dog. You don't expect to like banter with it. You don't expect it to tell you jokes. You don't expect to like trip it up by asking it, questions about, when was the last time the Pope visited Antarctica? And the sheepdog's just like. And like, you don't think that that's a bad sheepdog. It's like, you're the asshole because you're asking it questions that it's not really trained to understand. So this, I think, is a more sensible way to think about it. And if you think about them like that, at least the practical ones are already very smart. Like Digit is like really smart if you think of it as like a dog that's trained to make sure that like you're doing the right thing with your bank account. But yeah, it's not going to chat with you about other stuff. And other things I'm working on kind of have the same pattern. So I'm very, very, very optimistic about AI in actually being able to build, automatic versions of service animals. Less optimistic about having them be generally smart humans, but also don't care about that because, humans aren't that great.
All right, so we're actually out of time, so that gives me a good opportunity to thank you both. So Phil Libin, General Catalyst, who has invested the most in bots so far. I hope you invest much more. Any closing words about it?
No, I think this is the most optimistic time to actually build a fundamental new company, fundamental new technology. We're at a point where new stuff is going to get invented right now. Companies are going to get created from 6 months ago to 12 months from now, like in that window, are going to generate the next few $100 billion of venture capital returns. And it's a great time to be making and starting these companies. So I encourage people to do it.
Think as in hundreds of billions of returns. I love it. And Lauren Kunze is from Pandora Bots. So if you need a bot, Lauren has a language that is free that you can use or your team can use to build a bot. And if you need help, that's what you do on top of it. Mm-hmm. Any closing remark?
I agree with you. It's a very exciting time from the perspective of a platform that enables other people. We will see success from people who are tackling specific domains. And yeah, it's
great.
Just an exciting time.
Pandora Bots. Thank you very much.